Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending today. So my name's Jamie Willey, and I'm the Business Development Director here at Tribal Worldwide, and I help lead the ideation and creation of the strategies and propositions for any new clients considering partnering with Tribal. For those of you who haven't come across us before, Tribal Worldwide is a total experience agency, and what we mean by that is we think beyond established customer experiences and work with brands to innovate in their customer journeys, whether that be from online to offline or out of home to in store, as well as internal engagement processes and procedures to create ecosystems that build better products, services, communications, and ultimately better businesses. And these events that we were doing physically before lockdown, we've started doing virtually as of back in March, which seems like a million years ago. And these events, however, the context never changed. They're designed to really bring together leaders from a diverse range of sectors and companies to provide new points of view and learn from each other on how we can deliver new, better and more total experiences that change the faces of businesses today. And this is our latest series called Stronger Than Before, where we'll be speaking with brands and companies that are sort of really bouncing back or innovating to ensure they really emerge stronger than before the coronavirus pandemic, as we're all fundamentally operating in a completely different landscape. So we'll be asking businesses throughout this series, how they've pivoted, innovated, launched new products, services, to really meet the changing needs of audiences. This is the fourth event in our new series, and today we're going to be discussing sort of the fintech revolution, really, and what that means. And joining us for today's webinar, we're very fortunate to be joined by Stewart Martin, connected platform consultant at Barclays. Stewart will be sharing some of the work that they've been doing over at Barclays since he started. Stuart's fairly new in post, so it's really interesting to get sort of a fresh pair of eyes on what's going on over there. But he'll also be sharing his wealth of experience, having worked at American Express, Santander, Equifax, Tesco Finance, and he's been previously responsible for both marketing and strategy within the finance industry, as well as looking at new innovations around data and platforms, open banking, to drive new customer acquisition and engagement. And joining him is Laurel Wolfe who's the VP of Marketing at Klarna, and Klarna is Europe's most valuable privately held fintech, where Laurel fast tracks growth in new markets. Prior to joining Klarna, she spent many years at a payments technology provider, Verifone, looking after their European marketing activity, and has over 15 years international leadership experience across the tech and financial services sectors, producing award-winning campaigns, achieving commercial targets, and building brands along the way. And joining Laurel and Stewart is our very own Adam Powers, our Chief Experience Officer here at Tribal Worldwide. Adam leads the customer experience practice at Tribal, and he's been a creative and strategic senior leader, successfully operating at the intersection of design, experience, and technology for more than 25 years. Having worked agency side for the past decade, he's built and led high-performing teams on some of the world's most iconic brands, such as Barclays, Google, and Samsung, to name a few. So welcome all. I think we've got a really interesting cross section of experience and expertise today. So I just wanted to start off by coming to each of you really, and just getting I guess a minute or two from each of you on I suppose what you've been experiencing through your own lens over the last 5 to 6 months, how that's impacted your role and your business and where your business is going. And Laurel, I'd love to start off with you on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. Hi, everyone. So I always like to start these just making sure that people know what Klarna is and what we do. We're a buy now, pay later provider. We let people buy goods and pay for them later in a variety of ways. The most popular products that we offer are is one that lets you buy goods and pay for them in full 30 days later. And then we also offer a short-term installments product that lets you buy goods and pay for it in either monthly installments or biweekly installments. We differ a little bit on that offering per country. Those two products are offered interest-free to the consumer. And so I think where I come into the equation is what I'm interested in over the past few months has been obviously online shopping behavior has changed quite a lot. We've seen a lot of take up of our payment solutions in the checkout, but also just the volume of online shopping has increased significantly. And that's put a lot of different types of pressures on retailers. So we've been spending a lot of time kind of advising retailers, our clients and prospects about what maybe they need to think about going forward. So I think it's been extremely interesting time. And I think retailers, I don't think, we have seen situations where the retailers, perhaps at the very beginning of the lockdown in the UK, for example, had a dip in sales, but a lot of them have since recovered. I think it's now planning for the future based on consumer behavior that has changed. More people have shopped online that hadn't before, and I think they'll find that they like it. And that puts more pressure on the retailer to provide a great experience to those people to keep them in the online channel.
Thanks very much, Laurel. Looking forward to digging into that in more detail over the next hour. And Stewart, just sort of get a bit of an intro from you as to kind of where you've come from and what you've been seeing over the last sort of 5 to 6 months of lockdown.
Yes, good morning. Also, so as Jamie said in the introduction, I've very recently joined Barclays in the connected platform team. But I've spent most of lockdown actually with Equifax, who are kind of one of the world's largest credit reference agencies. And as you can imagine, certainly as during lockdown, there's been lots of changes to people's financial kind of exposure, etc. So all the credit bureaus in the UK, whilst they're still collecting data over this period because of the number of payment freezes, payment holidays, etc. That data is not going to be quite as valuable as it normally would be. Hence, a lot of these new solutions, the more the fintech, the open banking, pulling other data from other areas will start to form a really strong and help businesses make decisions on what kind of products can be offered, extensions to credit terms, etc. So, as I said, I've spent most of the kind of lockdown during at Equifax, joined Barclays, where we're sort of working to help major brands around, especially making sure they can still function and kind of BAU during these uncertain times. And then looking at new innovation and we're kind of things like fraud, etc. That's kind of during lockdown that kind of seeing increases in that. So how can we help kind of our kind of clients and brands in that area? So that's kind of where I've been sort of focused over the last few months, and it's been pretty interesting times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Adam, yourself sort of working with Trival's clients and your point of view from the market on that sort of broader customer experience piece, which obviously has fundamentally changed. You know, what's been your experience over the last sort of 5 to 6 months in this space?
Well, obviously we don't directly have financial services clients, but with our retail portfolio and automotive, and certainly we watch with interest how kind of different modes of payment are in play. And as Laurel talks about this kind of acceleration of online transactions and essentially people shopping online that simply hadn't before. And it's interesting the kind of leadership at Ocado talking about kind of 5 years acceleration happening in 5 months. But I guess there are 3 particular areas that I'm interested in learning a bit more and talking about alongside everything else. Is really this idea of financial inclusion, that actually fintech has got this incredible capability of bringing new customers on board, empowering people, whether they're individuals or small businesses, to engage with digital services at a level that they just simply weren't able to before if they were dependent upon a bricks and mortar branch or, if you 24-hour microloans and things like that. So on the plus side, that's extraordinary and empowering. But on the downside, there are folks that don't have smartphones that actually in an increasingly cashless society, they're feeling excluded. So what's the high wire act for whether you're Barclays or credit agencies or even Klarna, and there are things to decode there which perhaps actually the wider populace set in the UK wouldn't understand. It's interesting that Laurel started out by going, this is what we're about. I'm really interested in how these new models get communicated. I guess the two other things I'm interested in is just digital identity, security, and trust. How is that managed? So if this is such new territory to many customers, and lots of stories about cybersecurity and hacking and identity theft, what are the things that retail brands can do to provide security? But also, as a sector, how might things happen that raise all the boats? And I guess that leads into my third point of interest, particularly for Tribal, but for others too, I'm sure, in terms of startups and those fintech disruptors. It looks to me like some of them just aren't going to survive what's happened over the last 6 months. Others are consolidating and kind of hitching their wagons. And there are other instances where actually the bigger banks or larger organizations are bringing them on board, whether it's accelerator programs or smart partnerships that enable them to get the benefit of bringing those operators together. So again, interested in understanding where clever partnerships are happening, and certainly, I guess, specifically for Tribal, via outlets, which is a kind of retail park, a bit like Bicester Village, but across mainland Europe. They own the real estate, but they're really interested in the kind of shared ownership of user data and spend, and how you join these systems up that have grown independently are really challenging. So again, how more contextual customer experiences and smarter experiences can be delivered across payment and loans is really interesting too.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Laurel, that sounds like almost a natural segue back to you, really. That everything sort of Adam was talking about there around sort of that sort of transaction experience, that payment experience, in retail. And I know that sort of when you and I were talking the other day, you were talking about that sort of both, not just Klarna digitally online, but also in store. Really interested to understand more about your perspective on that, and especially from that customer experience and customer behavior point of view.
Yeah, I mean, Klarna is we're mostly online, but we do have an in-store variant that we offer to all retailers, really allowing people to pay in installments in store. I guess just over the past few months, obviously, we've seen not so much in-store take-up, but those that have been using it have found it extremely useful. Bike merchants, for example, are some of our clients, Brompton and Halfords. They have been able to use in-store quite successfully because of the strong performing category of sporting goods and equipment. I think that's the most interesting thing that we've seen, I guess, trend-wise over the past months, are definitely different age groups using Klarna. Our average age in the UK, for example, of a user is 33, but our fastest growing demographic was 45 plus during the pandemic. So we're seeing a lot more people not only shopping online, like I said earlier, but also choosing to use Klarna at the checkout, choosing to use an alternative payment method, try us out. And then we've seen strongly performing categories as well in things you would expect: beauty, wellness, home. Beauty's been actually a really top performer. I'm completely surprised at how well it's done. Skincare, home and garden, sports and outdoors, like I said. And I mentioned earlier, in the very beginning of the lockdown in the UK, we saw a dip in some categories in like fashion and footwear, but over the summer those have recovered. So yeah, we see. I think the interesting thing is you're starting to condition people a certain way, right? They're shopping online. They start to have expectations. So to keep people there, you're going to have to provide a great experience, and part of that great experience is offering alternative payment options. We like to think it's more about financial empowerment. We're letting people on their own terms decide when they're going to pay. They don't have to be kind of beholden to a card. They can choose other options, such as Klarna, to complete that transaction. And then they get to pay us back on their terms in the way that they think is suitable. I sometimes think of Klarna a little bit as like a contactless transaction. When I was working at Verifone all those years for those many years, we launched contactless in the UK. And everybody's like, oh, is this going to take off? I'm worried, tapping a card, this seems crazy. And now, look, we're totally conditioned to it. We love it. So I always think about Klarna in a similar way. You use it once, you like it, you come and use it again. That's how you get a payment method to take off somewhere. You solve a problem for a consumer. They like that. Then they seek it out the next time. You're on mute, my
you're on
friend.
mute.
Yeah.
There we go. Out of, I don't know, 18 webinars, that's the first time that's happened. So there we go.
I somehow doubt that.
Stuart, that's really interesting what Laurel was saying there. And I think talking about sort of seamless payment, seamless payments and making that sort of transaction experience, really good. I know that you're doing some work over at Barclays in that sort of space at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, so we are working with actually one of the companies that came through the Barclays Accelerator program. So essentially developing or giving consumers a digital receipt. So when you make the transaction, you'll get a digital receipt straight into your banking app. So a few other banks are involved in this, and I'd imagine in the next period of time, this could almost become the norm. And this is obviously with COVID. People don't want to be handling paper. They want to get access to this information, and it goes straight itemized into your banking app, and you can start to do lots of additional things with that once you understand what people are buying, where they're spending, and then you potentially start to build offers and loyalty around that as well. So that's just one of the areas that we're kind of innovating in. We've got a roadmap of kind of propositions over the coming period, but this is something that's it's already live. So if you're a Barclays customer now, you go in and you can see people like Papa John's, for example. You can sort of sign up, get the digital receipt straight into the app, and we think is something that's going to become pretty powerful over the coming years.
Mm. And I know, Stuart, you've got a lot of experience in the open banking space, and we've had some questions submitted, which we'll come to. But I mean, open banking as a concept, as an initiative, how, in your opinion, how has that sort of really accelerated the abilities of these fintechs coming through to leverage new products and services?
Yeah, it's been absolutely massive, and it's going to become bigger and bigger. But access to the adoption was a bit slow, to be honest, in terms of when this first launched a couple of years ago. But certainly now and during COVID, it's exploding the number of consumers that are essentially accessing these services. And then what that does, it allows brands to start to understand more information about those consumers. Key thing is make sure that they've got the right consents as well, that you get the consents to share the data. It can be used in a certain way, but then starting to build new user experiences around that, and it just gives you a far more rounded view of that individual in terms of their any financial stress, kind of spend, income that's coming in, where they're spending, etc. And then you can start to build more and more propositions from that. A lot of it is used around at the moment in terms of around credit decisioning, things like collections as well, and working out who to who to talk to and stuff. But I'd imagine the use cases are going to become far more in marketing loyalty as the whole as kind of open banking develops over the coming period.
Mm.
I think the interesting thing about open banking is that, it's a more wider playing field, I suppose, for everybody to participate. And all those things that you were saying before, those are great benefits for the companies that are going to be able to partake of it. But I always think the thing that's lacking is like, what's in it for the consumer? Even the term open banking, that's boring, they're not going to care. I always think we should rebrand open banking into something that the consumer cares about. But I think it just, again, it comes back to like, if you want that openness and you want consumers to partake in it and be trusting it, you're going to have to convince them that it's going to solve some problem for them, or they're not going to be interested. So I think I come back also to like the consumer has a role here. Are they going to take it up? Are they going to use it? Are they interested in using it?
Definitely. I think on that, Adam, you mentioned about inclusion, and I was really interested there, Laurel, that you said that kind of skew to the older demographics as a kind of growing demographic for you. I mean, one of the previous webinars where we were talking about retail, we were talking about kind of the role of in-store and how the role of that might change, and I think it'd be really interesting to understand more about those in-store payments and making for those sorts of more, let's call them offline transactions, for lack of a better term, where perhaps you don't have the digitally native or the digitally advanced people that may not know how to utilize Klarna or these new payment methods, but may be more open to using it in a more traditional setting, such as in-store. I mean, I guess what would you put that sort of growth area down to in your age demographic? Is that just people becoming more used to this sort of thing, or?
I think it really comes back down to like convenience. A Klarna payment solution is quite easy to use. For the most popular one that we have, you don't even have to enter your card details at that time. In our app, we are collecting all of the transactions that you've made, and you can choose to repay those all at the same time. So there's also speed and convenience is coming into it. We also, after you use Klarna once, we remember you, so the subsequent purchases become one click. So once you've used us once, there's a strong incentive to use us again and again, just simply because it's easy. And when we come back to the idea of what do people want from any transaction, is it to be hassle-free, doesn't take up too much time, and they get the things and they're able to move on with their life. So I think that also plays into it too. Like, the most valuable commodity that people have now is time. Their time is what's valuable. So anything that saves that time is something that is desirable and that what people want.
I can imagine that's a universal truth, Laura. I'm interested across markets where what kind of variants are you having to play out with Klarna? Because again, with our experience with our retail clients who have multi-market businesses, for instance, might be in Germany, the kind of there is a very different relationship with debt and credit cards than perhaps other markets in the EU. So how do you flex?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I think some behaviors are already trained. Like you use Germany as an example. They already do quite a lot of online bank transfer, so that they're emulating like a debit transaction with that, or they do a product that we offer. The deferred invoice product's quite popular there too. But other behaviors in the UK are not similar. I think the interesting thing about Klarna is we aren't credit in the traditional sense. It's not open-ended credit. You can't run up a huge debt with us. We have a quite strong limit on what people are allowed to use from us, and then you have to pay that off to get more. So for example, I've probably got 5 open Klarna transactions this month. I can't use Klarna again until I pay some of that off, and the total balance is probably, I don't know, £500. So I mean, there's that positive too, that I think there is a different way of thinking about credit, and if you use it in a good way and responsibly, then it can be a very positive thing.
Do you think the quality of the experience is doing much of the heavy lifting in terms of understanding that as a principle, or is there a kind of pincer movement with communication and other activity as well? Because it's pretty progressive, it would seem to me. I know you've been around for a while, but certainly in the UK market, it's a different way of thinking, isn't it?
It is a little bit of a different way of thinking. I was the first marketing hire in the UK. Actually, I came to Klarna to launch the market. And that was actually the hard part. Not necessarily, I guess it was more about, the hard part was actually explaining how the product works, because the idea of what we were doing was completely unknown here. So a lot of the initial marketing was more practical in its application, education, explanation. This is what's going to happen. This is how the product works. And I mean, honestly, we still do that now, and we should definitely continue to do that. Can we even do it better? Of course. But yes, I think part of it is that from a marketing perspective, getting some of the basics right at the very beginning. Like, this is what is going to happen when you use this product, and being clear about that.
Definitely. And Stewart, just going back to you, because I'll pick up on something else that was mentioned before around security, and data, and you've got a lot of wealth of experience in the data industry and GDPR and everything like that. When we're talking about kind of sharing of data, open banking, I can imagine that is a concern for a lot of consumers. And from your experience, what do sort of businesses in this fintech space need to be doing to make sure that their customers are feeling safe and secure online, and also in store when they're transacting?
Yeah, as you say, Jamie, yeah, this is a massive area, and obviously GDPR came in a couple of years ago as well in terms of protecting consumer data. So absolutely, lots of investment into security, making sure that you're making everything as robust as possible in terms of systems and processes. Yeah, I can't reiterate enough in terms of that's a big area that yeah, large corporations, all corporations need to be focused on in terms of kind of making sure that kind of everything's secure. People can't data breaches. We hear a lot about data breaches as well, and some of the big fines, etc. So there's a lot going on in that area, and there needs to be going forward.
Mm. And you mentioned sort of that rise in fraud over the lockdown period. I'm keen to sort of understand more about that from what you've been experiencing, and what we can do to sort of prevent that moving forward as well.
Yeah, so again, because there's a lot more online transactions, card not present, so increases in fraud. So there's lots of kind of data out there, kind of fintechs have got different fraud solutions as well. So it's kind of working with the data, putting in place the processes to monitor and identify that as kind of as much as you can to prevent that. But like anything, a lot of people have been taking advantage of this and trying to put through kind of fraudulent transactions. So yeah, it's kind of working to put in robust processes, kind of getting accurate kind of data which really help drive that, and then look to sort of kind of keep that under control and reduce it as much as possible.
Mm. Mm.
There's also things that, I mean, we've implemented, for example, one-time passwords, and there's 3DS. There's other things, consumer-facing things that merchants are implementing to make sure that, there's an extra level of, confidence in the transaction to make sure it's the right person using the payment method, if that's card or not.
Mm.
So.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. We've had a question submitted here. Around it's a charity business wanting to create new products around using open banking, and they're keen to understand any insight about audience profiles of who is actually kind of using this functionality, so what products have traction in the market, and how a charity could innovate in this space. Bit of an open question there. I mean, Stu, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
I'll start off. So yeah, as I said, initially open banking was quite niche in terms of some of the audiences, but over the last kind of few months, or certainly more and more people are now getting comfortable in terms of the kind of the way that you need to consent to this and share information in order to to build up that those different data insights. So yeah, I think this is where this is evolving. A lot of the use cases have been more around your traditional credit kind of credit risk, but moving more into building out different kind of propositions just by the wealth of data, but making sure you've got all the right consents. Kind of need to reiterate that in terms of the data, and then you can then start to understand a lot about those transactions, those consumers, what they're spending on, do they contribute to charities, all that, in order to just build up that profile. But to the question, the demographics, kind of more and more people are starting to use it. There's reports that are out there that get by various organisations around the uptake and the volumes of transactions, and so it's becoming more and more prevalent in terms of the data and the solutions that you can build around that.
Mm, mm. And Adam, you've got experience in this sector as well, and I know over the last 5-6 months as Tribal, we've been involved in some conversations with various charities that obviously have been really hard hit this year. From your perspective, look at talking to charities that are needing to innovate, they're needing to kind of change the way they're engaging their fundraising initiatives. I'd love to kind of hear from you a little bit about that from CX perspective.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm on the board of Klarna, campaign against living miserably, and really innovative charity that has been kind of wrestling through these times. And I think the challenge is when so much fundraising is about getting people together, that social distancing and lockdown have been disastrous, frankly. And so the opportunities for innovative fundraising, for different kinds of giving, for using a variety of platforms, beyond the shaking tin and the direct debit. What are the things that can enable people to feel part of these communities virtually, and feel like they can contribute? And whether that's a one-off fun run around your balcony, or major Sir Tom walking up and down his garden, through to virtual cycle rides and other things. So I think where the challenge is that it's for the charities to innovate in terms of the way that they fundraise and how they engage communities and bring people on board, but really also looking to technologies that will support them in doing that and find them new ways and compelling ways, because it's not just about it's not a pure transaction. It's a much more emotional relationship. So just the burden upon the quality of the customer experience is kind of elevated as well, because you need to feel like you're part of something, and that kind of value exchange is going to be baked into the customer experience. And I think, based upon the conversation we've heard, I'm struck. I'm not close to this, but this concept of open banking. What is the consumer-facing proposition there? What are the benefits? I think, as Laurel said, I'm not sure that I've heard that, and the folks that I've spoken to in banking have been quite excited, although it's slow take up. So again, how that directly translates would be something I think for an ongoing conversation. What does that mean from the other side, and how might there a partnership happen with charities in order to really feel the benefit of these new models and these new approaches?
Interesting. We've had a really interesting question, and I think, Stewart, this may be kind of your area, but I'd be interested to hear from others as well. But the question here is how do you view the new PSD2 payment regulation, and in particular the extra friction it inserts into the purchasing journey? Are your merchants and customers supportive of this, and do you see it as a problem or an opportunity? Stu, you may be on mute, I'm afraid, sir. There we go. You've done a me. You've done me.
Wow, that's a good question. We're tried to. I think it's a good thing. It's opening up the access to additional data and insights, and allowing the brand to start to make more relevant kind of decisions and kind of faster decisions in terms of kind of engagements with consumers. And so that's to me, in terms of I think it's quite a kind of good thing in terms of it depends when kind of how kind of the uptake's going to be over the next period of time.
And we've had another question submitted here around, how can we learn more about enhancing customer experiences when using these financial products? What tips to optimize the experience could you offer? Could you offer designers?
I'll come from it from a retail standpoint. I think it comes down to asking consumers what they want. This is the opportunity right now to ask your customers what they're interested, what they want from their buying journey, what would be good for them, what wouldn't be good for them, and implement it, listen to them, talk to them. And I think it comes down to I feel like sometimes now is a good time to do it, because you will be able to use that evidence and that data to come out stronger from this. Before, of course, the pandemic happened, everybody's super busy. Maybe they don't have time to listen to the customers as much. But here is a time to show that you are caring about how they're feeling, and it informs your marketing activity too, not just your payments or buying journey experience or anything like that. Also, just how you market your brand from a retail standpoint is the perfect time now to see like what are my customers really passionate about, and then devising marketing plans to meet that. So.
And I think Laurel, we've spoken about this on a few previous webinars. Is one of the first budgets we saw cut back in March was market research budget. Ironically, at a time where that's actually the thing that your clients need to be doing more of. And I think what's been good is sort of clients have woken up to that and are coming back now and doing exactly what you've just talked about there, which is just kind of going out to their customers and really understanding more about what it is that they want, and I think that's super important. As I said, we've had a couple of questions submitted. For those of you that might have missed my note at the beginning, please do submit any further questions to me in either directly in the chat or in the Q&As as we move forward. We've got sort of 20 minutes left.
Can I add just to that last
absolutely.
point? It's okay, Jane, because I'm the idea of customer-centric development, co-creation, 100%. But I think equally, like we've found with some of our other clients, I think it's true with financial services, actually looking outside of sector to draw in learnings, behaviours, the kind of customer experiences that instill trust, that impart value from the platform and from the experience itself, not just the marketing and communication. So the product is the marketing. I think that you've got perhaps some kind of legacy processes and systems and compliances in place that can really be a burden for driving a step change in customer experience. So I definitely think that there's the opportunity to look left and right, as it were, to other sectors and try and learn from those, and not just iterate on what's come before. I think things will come for that, as well as having your prospective customers, existing customers, as part of that process.
Absolutely. So we spoke a little bit, and so Laura, you I think you alluded to this really, that first it was kind of contactless, and it was like, oh, okay, is this going to take off, and then it was sort of other payment solutions coming through, such as Klarna. Obviously you've been plugged into this space for quite a number of years. What are your kind of predictions for where this space might be going? I know that's pretty blue sky, crystal ball stuff, but if there's any sector that's never standing still, it's the fintech space. There's always something new coming out. I mean, any kind of prediction, whether that's kind of device enabled innovations or whether it's more kind of integrated solutions,
That's a bit of a tough one. I guess from a payments perspective, I see alternative payment methods like Klarna and other ones, direct bank transfers, for example, people like Trustly, things like that coming to a bigger group of people. They'll find a benefit in it and use it, and take up will continue to increase. That doesn't mean traditional cards are going to go away, not at all. But I think it just gives people more options, and they like that option, and they'll pick the one that works for them. So I think that is important from a fintech space standpoint. I mean, we were talking a little bit, like we might cover this earlier, but just about like what's going to happen in the future. I see, yes, definitely some consolidation is going to happen amongst the fintechs. We have such a proliferation of them, particularly in London. And obviously what's coming up now is that all of them have to show a clear path. They're already profitable, or they have a clear path to profitability in the very near future. So, the bull run is over. We have to definitely show to investors in the future that the success is here, or it will very, very soon be here. But I actually kind of think we will see maybe some partnerships and consolidation of people that have like adjacent and complementary services. So people might join and have a bigger platform there, as opposed to maybe a competitor buying another competitor. I think that could still happen, but I definitely see the opportunity for some of the fintechs that are around to join forces, if you will, and provide a stronger platform going forward together.
And I was going to just add to that. That's where banks are operating, kind of working with fintechs, and it just gives more kind of agility to go out to market quicker, prototype new developments, etc. So not buying kind of working with companies, and credit bureaus as well are doing that a lot as well. So working and developing out strong partnerships to essentially get out there quicker and giving a really good user experience, and that's where kind of fintechs are really strong at. But building upon things like the data-driven, the analytics that sit behind it, starting to develop AI, chatbots, etc. So that's, I think, where we're certainly the direction of travel. A lot of it's underpinned by data and analytics, and that's kind of where I believe that kind of the shape of the future is going to be.
No, definitely really interesting. And I think really interesting there about that sort of those sort of adjacent businesses there, Laura, as well. I mean, I take, for instance, my car, which is becoming more and more of a connected experience these days. I can purchase things through my car. I can purchase things through products that typically weren't joined up in the past. And I think certainly Adam, doing a lot of work with Volkswagen as a client, to know that sort of connected journey and sort of taking that through to the dashboard, and even now as well, is something that a lot of automotive businesses are looking at, doing similar initiatives that, say, companies like Apple and that have done over the years. But really interesting to kind of see where that goes. So we're sort of. Well, I'm just checking if we have any more questions submitted. Nothing yet. No. So as I say, please do, if you've got any questions, just submit them in the last sort of 15 minutes that we've got here.
Just as a societal point, I guess, off the back of that, Jamie, in terms of forecast into the future, I was looking at an IMF, International Monetary Fund report, and talking about the kind of angle here about actually government to consumer being an increasing thing in fintech, that actually the fintech sector actually facilitating payment direct to individuals. And I think that's a kind of interesting space. Obviously, we've talked about kind of retail and the direct relationship with consumer, but also be interesting to see how the sector operates as a kind of intermediary between government getting to payment to individuals. We've seen it in the kind of business bounce back loans and other things during the last 6 months. So I think that again is a kind of interesting space that perhaps the big banks are the natural go-to folks at the moment for that. But it might be that there are people that are more fleet of foot and startups that can provide that kind of intermediary role and innovate in that space. I mean, I don't have any views beyond that. I just thought it's really interesting that that's becoming more and more of a thing as government doesn't have the wherewithal to kind of connect with its citizens effectively in the financial sector potentially.
Yeah, definitely. I guess in the last sort of 15 minutes, it'd be I suppose just great to get a wrap up. I mean, I started off there, sort of pose the kind of out of left field to Laurel there about the sort of what's the future of fintech. Go on, Laurel, solve all our problems. But I guess in a similar sort of way, I guess I'd like to sort of go through the panelists, I suppose, as a wrap up. When we're looking at the kind of title of this, saying like the fintech revolution, I suppose, as businesses operating, whatever sector it might be, whether that's retail, whether it's charity, whatever you might be doing, I suppose that transaction with your customer is always that sort of common point that any business will have. So, as we're looking at sort of fintech as a revolution and making customer experiences better, making transactions more seamless, connected platforms, open banking, all of these initiatives that kind of come together to ultimately drive for better customer experiences. What do we, I suppose, what would we like to be seeing? What have we learned from this year, I suppose? As consumer behavior has changed at a fundamental level. What do we want to learn from this year? What do we think we can take forward? And because we're right now, I feel, in a position where businesses are in a prime position to really kind of pivot and innovate. I think, and we've already seen some examples of that in market, of businesses that have been really innovative in reacting to this. I mean, I guess, Stuart, so start with you, if that's okay. As some closing remarks, what do you think we need to be learning from this year, and how, as businesses, do we need to be supporting other businesses and consumers in driving for better customer experiences?
Yeah, so I think it's been unprecedented times for everyone. So I think it's making sure that businesses are helping consumers, but also businesses are helping business. We've not talked too much about smaller SMEs and how we talked a bit about the bounce back loans, etc. But how do we help those businesses survive. And there's a lot happening in the fintech area around that space as well, in terms of cash flow and helping them sort of understand, just getting through this period of time. But I think what we're learning is that, there's how we kind of look after society, the data that's available. My background's data analytics, very much data driven, using the data insights that are out there to give as good customer experience as possible, getting the right relevant offers out to consumers, using data the right way as well, because there's, I think we're about to see, once the furlough scheme ends, and there's going to be a mass explosion of information and potentially job losses and stuff, and it's just how we can sort of help consumers through this period and as a society act in the right way, really. That's kind of what I feel is.
And well, actually, that's good, because whilst you were saying that, the question submitted that dovetails nicely to that. So before I pass on to the next panelist, I'll dovetail this question into Stuart's response. There is it's being submitted here: is beyond working with charities, what avenues for social good do you see fintech potentially moving into in the next few years? Do you feel like fintech has a responsibility towards these kinds of social movements? And I think Stewart there was talking very much about social good, etc. So I mean, moving on to yourself, Adam, as you're next on my screen. Again, sort of those closing remarks in a similar sort of question.
So certainly, I think more broadly, I'm interested in actually who owns that information and how might that information be used to make better customer experiences. Again, certainly for some of our retail clients, there are challenges around, who actually has access to that, and in a way that isn't just about kind of sharing people's personal data, but actually in kind of meaningful, credible, trustworthy ways that consumers can see the benefit from. So I certainly think that is, really interesting going forward, as well as the points that Stewart mentioned. I think the kind of social good point is when it works well, fintech can be incredibly empowering. Again, a case study in this IMF paper was a particular instance of a person kind of waking up at home in Kenya who essentially has a market stall, being able to take a micro loan via their phone in the morning to purchase some goods to sell on their stall during the day, then actually pay back the loan in the evening and bank their profits from the sale during the day. They've not had to go to a branch. They've not had to work to somebody else's hours. Actually, if those technologies are in place to empower that person to do the things that they want to do and feel really in control, which I think thematically is a thing as well, that sense of individual control, continue to be really important things. But as I say, that's a high wire act between that and excluding sectors of society that can't get a bank account, can't get a kind of sufficient credit rating to get access to some of these tools and services. And it may be that bigger financial organizations don't care so much about them, but actually I think you've got to be thinking about the kind of cumulative effect of this as well. So I certainly think there's a lot of positivity there, but it needs to be mindful of the possible downsides as well.
Definitely. And Laurel, sort of finally to you as well on those points.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aligned with both of the comments. So from Stewart's side, from a Klarna standpoint, our job is to help merchants as well. They put our payment method in their checkout, and that helps them boost their business. They get more conversion from having that alternative payment method. So part of it is giving retailers an extra helping hand to make sure that they can keep their sales high and that they can move on and have a beneficial business as we come out of this situation. But the other thing about fintechs and social good, I think, is quite interesting, because there's a lot of fintechs, particularly doing things with unbanked populations. Like, that's their core business, helping people to get bank accounts that maybe couldn't get bank accounts, or helping people, get better mortgage rates that they perhaps weren't going to get or didn't know about, or it was becoming too cumbersome for them to do that. So I think, that's the great job that a fintech can offer, and the great value add that they can offer is helping people manage their money better and giving them more options.
Definitely. No, that's really that's all been really interesting. I think kind of the things we can agree on there, and some of the points certainly I'm going to take away is I suppose that importance of these businesses working together for the greater good, and sort of co-creation and putting the customer at the center of everything that they're doing. And definitely agree. I've been reading a lot in the press recently around technical poverty, especially sort of in the context of children that have had to be at home and can't log on to their virtual classrooms and things like that. And I think there's definitely a subset of the UK society that will be growing up in this technical poverty. And I think Adam, we spoke about this yesterday. Is the general consensus is young people they just know how to work a laptop, or they just know how to work an iPad, and it's not always the case. And I think definitely sort of these businesses coming together to help with that for social good is definitely important.
Financial and digital literacy, kind of hand in hand.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think sort of there we've answered the questions that have been submitted, and we've covered off some interesting ground. So I just wanted to thank first of all our panelists for giving up their time this morning. And providing their insight, and also thank you to all of you who have turned up to listen today. There will be a recording sent out as well, so keep an eye out for that, and obviously share with any of your colleagues or peers that couldn't attend today. If this was your first event, thank you very much, and we hope that you can attend our next one. They're the first Thursday of every month. You can also get our back catalogue of all the previous webinars that you may have missed, over the last 5 to 6 months. No, very much. Thank you, man, as well. Thank you. So I just got some messages coming through from some of the attendees. And yes, no, we'll be sending out communications about this for everyone. So keep an eye out for them, and very much looking forward to welcoming you back at one of our future events. And indeed, if anything kind of has sparked any thinking or any questions outside of this, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we can either set up a separate chat or get you in touch with one of the panelists if you want to connect with them. And so yes, very much looking forward to carrying on the conversation. And again, thank you very much, panelists. And yes, I'll let you all go and have a good lunch or something, whatever you're going to be up to, another call or whatever you're going to be doing. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye now.